Welcome everyone. Fruits of the Orchard, Parshat Vayeishev. This is a packed parsha. There's so much happening in this parsha. We'll do our best to bring as much as we can. For those who have Fruits of the Orchard, you'll see that there are two articles and one very, very short one. We're going to be concentrating exclusively really on the first article. And that will actually bring us through the whole parsha, even though in the article itself, it really only deals with the first verse of the parsha. But we're going to expand on the ideas given in the first verse, and we'll see how it connects the whole parsha together. So the parsha begins, Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. And Yaakov sat, he dwelled in the land of his father, in the land of Canaan. As we know, every verse has so many different levels of meaning. We're going to try to explore some of these different meanings. So the first thing is the context. Yaakov has spent his whole life in a certain way in conflict. From the moment he's born, he's holding on to the heel of Esav. He is in, we'll call it conflict, competition with Esav. There is the battle over the firstborn, the battle over the blessing of their father Yitzchak. Then he has 20 years of battling with Lavan. And then he comes back to Eretz Yisrael and he fights with the angel. And then he meets Esav again. And then the whole incident of Shechem with Dinah. And then this parsha begins. Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. Yaakov is now ready to sit, to lay back, maybe even retire. He needs a break. He needs a break. That's the context, a simple understanding. And Rashi confirms this. So this is one of the classic Rashis in the Torah. It's on the first verse. And he says like this. First of all, he gives many, many different explanations of this verse. And then he says, the Od Nidrash Bo. And then there's another drush, but this is the one that almost everyone picks up on. Vayeishev. So what does it mean that he sat, he dwelled, he rested? Bikesh Yaakov lishev b'shalva. Yaakov sought to sit in shalva and peace. That's what he wanted. He's had a lifetime of conflict. He wants to sit in peace. Kafatz alav rugzo shel Yosef. What happened? The whole incident of Yosef jumped at him. Because right after this, we have the whole conflict between his sons, the 12 tribes, and they end up in this parsha selling Yosef. So here, Yaakov wants to sit, but this whole incident with Yosef happens, and then he mourns for 22 years, thinking that Yosef has been killed, devoured by a wild animal. But the Rashi continues, and this is what everyone quotes. Tzadikim mivakshim liyeshev b'shalva. Tzadikim request to sit in peace. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, says, Lo dayan letzadikim ma shemitukan lehem laolam haba. It's not. God says to the tzaddikim, to Yaakov. It's not enough what is prepared for you in the world to come, meaning eternal peace. Ela shemevakshim liyashav b'shalva ba'olam hazeh. It's a question, and you also want to sit in peace in this world? It's posed as a question. Again, I'll do this again. Hashem says to Yaakov, and by extension to all of us, it's not enough what's prepared for you in the world to come. You also want eternal peace in this world. So this is like a classic Rashi. Everyone comments on the meaning of this. So I heard an explanation from Rav Soloveitchik, who simply reads the exact words, but instead of posing it as a question, he interpreted it as a statement. So instead of reading it, it's not enough for what's prepared for the tzaddikim in the world to come, that you also want to sit in peace in this world. He just changes it to a statement. And it's not enough what is prepared in the world to come. The tzaddikim also want to sit in peace in this world. But here it's not that they want it for themselves only. A tzaddik ultimately is an Eved Hashem, is a servant of Hashem. And the tzaddik is the representative, in a sense, of Hashem in this world, and is endowed with the powers and the ability to bring peace and comfort and rectification to Am Yisrael. So Rav Soloveitchik is saying, no, the tzaddikim are saying, Hashem, it's not enough that there's eternal peace in the world to come and not in this world. The tzaddikim want to bring peace down to this world as well. So this is an awesome insight into this Rashi. It's really quite amazing. But to look deeper at the simple understanding of Rashi, and here I'll quote from Rav Steinsaltz, Alav Shalom, in a book called Strife of the Spirit. It's a book of essays from Rav Steinsaltz, and the first one is called Strife of the Spirit. And in it, he explains, let's not forget that here it says Vayeishev Yaakov, but Yaakov just received a new name called Yisrael. And the definition of Yisrael is, this is what we learned last week, is Kisarita im Elokim v'anashim v'tuchal. You fought with God and man and you prevailed. So the actual definition of Yisrael is a life of constant struggle, constant confronting obstacles. Now, a person has a choice. I think we all know, and we can be honest enough, that it used to be on the Aliyah posters for Israel. They used to have a picture of a sticker weed in like a desert sand. And it used to say, we didn't promise you a rose garden. Israel is not the easiest place. This world is not the easiest place. So Rav Steinsaltz points this out, and he says that the pursuit of eternal peace in this world is an illusion, and not a positive illusion, because that's not the reality of this world. The reality of this world is tests and conflict and trials and progress. In other words, we can look at it in a very positive way. Many people look at challenges as the worst thing that could happen. Other people look at challenges as a way to progress, to overcome, which is what Yisrael did, what Yaakov did. He overcame, he prevailed. So Rav Steinsaltz points out, it's not to say that there isn't the possibility of peace in this world. There is, of course, and that's what the tzaddikim want to bring down, is that even though we could relate to this world as this constant struggle, or as his essay said, the strife of the spirit, there is the possibility of shalom. And here we'll bring in Shabbat. Because when it says Vayeishev, and he sat, well, if you look at the word Shabbat, the first two letters of Shabbat is Shev. It's the same root as Vayeishev. And so the secret of Shabbat is we're not naive. On Shabbat, we're well aware that the world is continuing. And to be honest, there's wars going on everywhere. There's sickness everywhere. There's hatred. There's what the world is. And yet on Shabbat, it's an island of peace. That we are able to sit b'shalva. We are able. And so that's the Rav Soloveitchik's explanation, is don't read it as a question. It's not enough of the eternal peace in the world to come. You also want peace in this world. And the tzaddikim, and we all have a spark of the tzaddik in us. And so, yes, we have the right, and it's a positive thing to seek out peace wherever we can in our lives and between people. But what Rav Steinsaltz was saying is just the whole world is made the pursuit of peace, kind of like on a pedestal. And he was just trying to say peace is wonderful. It's the greatest gift in the world. But let's not be naive and let's not be blind to the realities of life. So this is how we start the Parsha. Now, in Fruits of the Orchard, the whole first article is about meditation. Because one of the deeper meanings of Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Canaan is that Yaakov was sitting in meditation. How do we understand this? By Avram, already it says, he uses the same word. When God appeared to Avram after the circumcision, and there was this awesome revelation to Abraham, it says, V'hu Yoshev bepetach ha'ohel. When God came to him, he was sitting in the opening of the tent. And one of the ways to understand why do we have to know he was sitting is because he was sitting in meditation. And here by Yaakov also, he wanted to sit b'shalva. Well, how do we find peace in this world? He was sitting in meditation. Meditation was the means to which Yaakov wanted to achieve shalva. By Yitzchak, it doesn't use the word Vayeishev, but it says Vayetze Yitzchak l'suach b'sadeh. Yitzchak went out to converse in the fields. And this is the antecedent, the precedent for, really started with the Baal Shem Tov and then taken over by his great-grandson, Rabbi Nachman, the idea of hit bodedut. That kind of meditation of going out into nature like Yitzchak did and being alone. We're going to go into this a little bit deeper in a few minutes. And to converse with God. So here we see Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were all involved in meditation. And when we go through Jewish history, all the prophets, all of the sages, the Hasidic masters, they all practiced different types of meditation. So one of the understandings of what does it mean, Migurei Aviv, that Yaakov sat in the land of his father, in the land of Canaan. So Hasidus explains Migurei means it comes from the word gar, to dwell. So Yaakov sat in the dwelling places of his father. But Megurei, Gurei also is another word for yira, for fear or awe. And this was the attribute of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Gevura, and the inner dynamic of yira, of Gevura is yira. So just like Yitzchak practiced meditation, so now Yaakov, he's back in the dwelling place of his father, and now he's sitting in meditation in the awesome practice that he learned from his father and his grandfather, and that of meditation. So again, going back to Shabbat, we see that the 6 days of the week is like Rav Steinsaltz explained it. It's the days of work, the days of ups and downs and ins and outs. We all know it in our own lives very well. And then Shabbos comes. And that's when we can sit b'shalva. Now, the Zohar calls a tzaddik Shabbat. Why? Exactly what Rav Soloveitchik was trying to say, that tzaddikim, they can learn to sit in shalva even during the week, where the week also can take on the aspect of Shabbat. I remember very, very well from Reb Shlomo that he would have a teaching on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, didn't matter. And many times he would either greet people or end by saying, Good Shabbos, Good Shabbos, Good Shabbos. You know why? Because that hour or 2 or 3 that we were spending with Reb Shlomo, it was like Shabbos. It was heavenly. And he would say, Good Shabbos, Good Shabbos. And that's what it says in the Zohar, that the tzaddikim are called Shabbat, because they have the ability to bring this shalva, this peace, into the week. So now what I want to do is I want to take this theme of meditation, because it's a very, very important topic. And we see that it goes all the ways back to the Avot and the Imahot. All the Avot and the Imahot were shepherds. Moshe was a shepherd. David HaMelech was a shepherd. And the experience of a shepherd is a lot of being alone, and he's bodedut. He has the sheep, but out in the fields for hours and hours and hours at a time. And that became a meditative practice. So with the limited time that we have, I just want to say a few things about meditation. And that is that there are many different types of meditation that are similar to the meditation that most people, when you hear meditation, think about the East and different practices of Eastern meditation. And all of them are good and legitimate, and there are ways to practice them in a Jewish context. And that's the whole idea through breathing. Breathing is a huge part of meditation. And we have this straight from our tradition, where it says the last verse in the book of Psalms is Kol haneshama tihalel ka hallelujah. That the soul of every living thing should bless Hashem. So the sages say, don't read it neshama, read it neshima. Don't read it, the soul of every living being will praise Hashem. Read it, the breath of every living thing. Each and every breath will praise Hashem. And so therefore there are many, many practices within Jewish meditation that makes use of the idea of breathing as a device to get into a meditative state. And then there's the whole idea of emptying the mind and getting to a place of shalva, to getting a place of inner peace. And this is the typical type of meditation that many, many people have been introduced to. And as I said, these are very good and legitimate. But also there are many, many types of meditation that are exclusively Jewish, in a Jewish context. And here we'll introduce the two main words for meditation. One is hit bodedut, that we mentioned already, from the word boded, alone, aloneness. So this is the idea of going out alone and being with Hashem, speaking to Hashem like Yitzchak did, to converse in the fields, to open one's heart and mind in any way that one wants, in any language. It could be through laughing, it could be through crying, it could be through music, it could be through introspection. And Rabbi Nachman encouraged people to talk to God like your best friend, to just open up and let it all spill out. The other word for meditation in Hebrew is hit bonenut, from the word bina and boneh. Boneh means to build, and bina means to understand. So hit bonenut is the practice of meditation that will bring us to a new level of understanding. And so therefore, in this type of meditation, it uses an array of possibilities. And in the Jewish context, some of the, we'll call it methods to use in order to build new understanding and to come to a chidush, new innovative thought. And there's a hint to this, a very beautiful hint. The word yeshev, to sit, is gematria 312, which is the same value of the word chadash, a chidush, a new idea, new inspiration, new insight. And that is the really specific type of Jewish meditation. What are some of the methods that we can use? So one can meditate on the sfirot, on the Hebrew letters, on names of God, on levels of the soul, the different Kabbalistic worlds. But more in general, and the more accessible is, like we just did, the word Vayeishev equals chadash, And that gives us insight into what's the purpose of sitting in meditation, is to come to a new understanding. So we take verses, we take words, and we meditate on them. Avram Abulafia, one of the greatest Kabbalists from approximately 800 years ago, so he developed a whole system of meditating on permutations of words. And he encouraged people to take pen and paper and take a word. And for those who come to the Tuesday class, so we have spent a lot of time, or 70 Faces, where we dealt with permutations. So we quoted the Tikkunei Zohar, which takes the word Bereshit in the beginning, first word of the Torah, and there's 6 letters, and starts to make combinations of those letters. And Avram Abulafia said, when you do that and you write them down and then you contemplate them, it will lead you into a meditative state of mind. So this is very, very different than emptying the mind. The whole practice of emptying the mind is totally legitimate. And its purpose is to give a person a sense of their own soul, a sense of peace. But the type of Jewish meditation that we're talking about is much more intellectually active. It's very active. And so if you want a definition for meditation, so one of the best definitions is focused thought. Even when we're trying to empty our mind, we do it through, many times, what's called a mantra, a word or a verse where we say over and over and over again. And that leads us to get beyond the usual racket in our brain, the usual static. And many people choose Shema Yisrael. People choose their own name, or many, many important phrases in Jewish tradition, and say them over and over again until the mind gets beyond the static. But in Jewish meditation, that's just the first step. In other types of meditation, that's the goal. The goal is to empty the mind and just experience beyond thought, beyond ego. And again, this is very, very helpful, very, very positive. But Hit Bonanut wants new understanding. And so another word that is almost synonymous with meditation is contemplation. And that's why one of the best ways of meditating is through learning, is to sit with a sefer and to learn. And as the learning progresses and we start to forget all of the outside static and get beyond our usual thought patterns, and we're become one with the Torah, we become one with the text, and then we start to contemplate. So contemplation and meditation, again, we have to break through the stereotypes that meditation is sitting in a static lotus position for an hour, and that's what meditation is. The other important idea of meditation is what we call kavana. Kavana means intent, that when we do a mitzvah, that instead of doing it by rote or by routine, that we focus our thought on the meaning of the mitzvah we're about to do. That's called kavana. But this works for prayer as well. There's a way where we say the words, but we're not really attached to the words. We're saying them, and that's important. And we're fulfilling an obligation to pray. But many times we do not enter into a meditative state through prayer. And prayer is one of the highlights of how we can enter into a meditative state by meditating on the words that we're saying. Now, obviously, when many times we all are challenged by this, when we go to a minyan, and the minyan is going very quickly, sometimes it's very, very hard to focus on each word, each verse, because it's happening very quickly. A lot of times we have to do this on our own time. One of the most important meditations of all is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And some of you I know have, but one of my books is on Shema Yisrael, 200 meditations on the Shema. Because sometimes we just say the Shema and we don't really know what to focus our thoughts on. What are the possibilities? What are we supposed to be thinking about? And so I present 200 meditations short. And that's one of the keys here. Again, we tend to think in stereotypes that meditation means an hour. And if you can't do an hour, don't even try. That's because that's not what's called meditation. Well, that's not our concept of meditation. A kavana, and listen, we're coming, you see behind me, a Chanukiah. It's almost Hanukkah. So we can light the lights and really have nothing in mind other than that we're supposed to light the lights. It's Hanukkah. That's what we do. And oh, they're so pretty. And they are. But what about thinking? That's another book of mine is The Lights of Hanukkah, 100 meditations. So that's what kavana is. And it could take 5 seconds. But if our minds are focused for those 5 seconds, that is a type of meditation. So we can see here the possibilities are almost infinite of what we can use for meditation. Of course, music is not music. Music is when we listen to music in the background, and we're not really it's nice. It calms us down. It makes us not feel alone. It's got a good beat. We're talking about sitting and listening to music in a meditative state. So I'll tell you when I'm not over the years with many children and many grandchildren, but when I light candles, my wife and I, we turn on very, very mellow music, and we sit by our Chanukiah for a half an hour, and the music helps us flow into between looking at the candles and listening to the music. You enter into a meditative state. Now, there's a lot more to be said about meditation. Some of it is written in the Fruits of the Orchard. But now, as a way to get to the rest of the Parsha, I'll bring a statement from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan wrote a book. He wrote 3 books on meditation. Meditation in the Bible, meditation in Kabbalah, and Jewish meditation. 3 books on meditation. And he makes the statement that all prophecy comes through an initial state of the prophet meditating. Now, it could be meditating in prayer. It could be meditating, being out in the field and conversing with God. All the different types that we talked about, we far from explored all the different ways that we can practice meditation. But he said that all of the prophets had, in a sense, had to be in a state of meditative consciousness in order to receive prophecy. So this is my lead in to the rest of the parsha. This parsha, perhaps more than any other parsha in the Torah, has incident after incident connected to prophecy. So with the time that we have remaining, we're going to run through some of these. And I have to admit, a lot of it will be just very general because I want to show the bigger picture of how many different types or incidences are related to prophecy here. So we'll start with Yosef and his dreams, because right after the opening verse, it talks about how Yosef was Yaakov's favorite. And Yosef has two dreams. And both of them, quite obviously from the text, upset his brothers very much, because in both dreams, he dreamt of the symbols in the dream is that he was a stalk of grain, and the brothers were stalks of grain, and all of them bowed down to his stalk of grain. And the second one, he dreamt of the sun and the moon and 11 stars, which is symbolic of his father and his mother and his 11 brothers. And they also bowed down to him. So in the text, it says that even Yaakov was somewhat upset with Yosef. And he said, what kind of a dream is this? And some explain it's because Rachel, Yosef's mother, had died already. So Yaakov was like, what do you mean your father and your mother are going to bow down to you? Your mother's not even alive. What is this dream? But then it says, the Aviv Shamar et hadavar. But his father guarded this thing. Well, what thing? Yaakov, who had prophetic dreams himself, understood that Yosef was having prophetic dreams here. He understood that very well. And it says he guarded this thing, and it's explained, he guarded it to see when it would be manifest. So when was it manifest? 22 years later, when Yosef's brothers came to Egypt. Now Yosef, unbeknownst to them, is the second in charge of Egypt, and they bowed down to him. And so his dream was quite literally fulfilled. And this is our first incident, is that these dreams were prophetic. I believe we mentioned that there are 10 dreams in the book, in the 5 books of the Chumash, in the Torah. There are 10 dreams. All of them are prophetic, and 9 of the 10 happen in this month of Kislev. 4 are in this parsha. We're going to get to the dreams of the butler and the baker. 4 of them are in this parsha, and 2 are next week with Paro. So in just 2 weeks, there's 6 of them. And we have the other ones also, of Yaakov as well, and Lavan. So here we see, and all the dreams are prophetic. So the next incident that we want to go to is that, and for those who want to look in a Chumash, it's It's chapter 38. Pasuk. No, I'm sorry. That's the next one. Let me go back here. One second. Oh, okay, so it's 37:14. Okay, 37:14. It says like this. This is Yaakov calls Yosef, and he says, Hineni, I am here. This word Hineni usually comes around prophetic experiences. I am here. It's usually God calling someone and the person saying, Hineni, I am here. So the verse says, V'yomer lo, and Yaakov says to Yosef, Lech na ra'eh et shalom achicha. Please go and check on the peace of your brothers, v'et shalom atzon, and the peace of the sheep, v'hashiveni devarim, and bring back a report to me. V'yashlichehu me'emek Chevron v'yavo Shechema. And he sent him, Yaakov sent Yosef from the valley of Chevron to Shechem. So here's another classic Rashi. On the word Emek Chevron, on the words the valley of Chevron. We would think, you read it, what's there to discuss? He sent them from the valley of Chevron. That must be where they were, to go to Shechem, because that's where the brothers were shepherding the sheep. But look what Rashi says. He says, V'halo Chevron Bahar. Rashi says, wait a minute. Chevron is not in a valley, it's in the mountains. Shneamar, and he brings a verse to prove it. V'yalu b'negev v'yavo ad Chevron. And they came up from the Negev, and they came to Chevron. So it means that they went up into the mountains where Chevron is. So Rashi is saying, so what does it mean from the valley of Chevron? So listen what he says. This is just a classic drasha. He says, Ella me'etze amuka shel otot tzadik akavur b'Chevron. He said, the way we should understand it is the valley of Chevron. Now, the word valley is emek. But in Hebrew, why is it called emek? Because it's in a deep ravine. So the word deep, omek, is the same word. Something is very deep, like intellectually. It's omek. Getting to the omek of a davar is getting to the depths of a matter. So he says, it says from the valley of Chevron, because it's the advice, the deep advice of that righteous person who's buried in Chevron. Who's buried in Chevron? Abraham. L'kayem mash ne'amar la'Avram, to fulfill what was prophesied to Avram bein betarim, in the covenant of the pieces. Ki ger yezarecha, because your seed will be strangers in a strange land. So let's understand this. So again, Rashi is explaining that the valley of Chevron doesn't mean physically a valley. It means from the deep, and it's so significant. The word here is advice. The deep advice of the tzaddik who's buried in Chevron, and that's Abraham. And what is it talking about? It's talking about when God prophesied to Avram that your seed will go down to Egypt for 400 years, and they'll be strangers. And then they'll come up with great wealth. So that's what Rashi says. But the significance of this is it's hinting, there's two types of prophecy. There's what's called clear prophecy and unclear prophecy. And clear prophecy actually has two levels to it. Only Moshe prophesied in what was called through a clear pain. He saw it was a clear prophecy. All the other prophets saw clearly, but it was true like what's called like a frosty pain. They could see clearly what's outside, but they couldn't catch every detail. But both of them, in a sense, are called clear prophecy. Unclear prophecy is when a person acts or says something that is prophetic, and they may or may not know the significance of what they're saying. So the question that's been asked for thousands of years, Bracha, please hold it, okay? Hold the question, is that did Yaakov understand when he sent Yosef that he was setting in motion the prophecy of Abraham that was given over to him in Brit Ben Abatarim? Or was he unclear prophecy? He was sending Yosef, and he was a channel for a greater destiny that he may not have understood at the moment what he was setting in motion. This is a question that's been asked on this verse really for thousands of years. What did Yaakov know? What did Yosef know? Many people say they were very aware of what was happening here. They were very aware that this prophecy had to be fulfilled, and it had to start somewhere. And I'll use the word in like a crazy way, it happened through the brothers selling Yosef. Now this is where where free will and divine providence, the whole mystery, because the brothers acted according to their free will. They sold Yosef. They weren't thinking, oh, we're going to sell Yosef so he can fulfill the prophecy and we're all going to go to Egypt. No, it didn't work like that. They used their free will, but there was a higher destiny happening. We're going to see it in a minute. So that's another type of prophecy here. The next one is with Yehuda and Tamar. This is all in this parsha. So after they sell Yosef, so it says that Yehuda went down from his brothers, because all the brothers, Yehuda was the leader, and they were chas v'sholom, but Shimon and Levi proposed killing him, and Reuven said, no, let's just put him in a pit for right now, and he hoped to save him. And it was Yehuda who said, no, we can't spill our brother's blood. Well, let's sell him. And then afterwards, when they went back to Yaakov and they saw he was unconsolable, they all started doing tshuva. And the Midrash says they looked to Yehuda and said, why did you tell us to sell him? You're the leader. If you would have said, let's just give him some musar and let him go home, we would have listened to you. So it says that Yehuda went down, he married a woman, he had 3 sons. The first son married a woman named Tamar, and he refused to give her seed, and he died. And then the second son, in a Levirate marriage, married her. He did the same thing. He did not want to impregnate her. and he also died. And then Yehuda was afraid to give her his third son. Now, he didn't understand that Tamar was an incredibly righteous woman. And it wasn't her fault at all. It was really his sons that really weren't on the level. But he held back giving his last son to Tamar. Now, Tamar had a clear prophecy that she was meant to have children from this family of Yehuda, because from Yehuda comes David, from David comes Mashiach. So this is what our tradition gives over, that she was propelled, she was powered by a prophecy. And so what did she do? She dressed as a prostitute. She enticed Yehuda, and they had relations. And 3 months later, they noticed that she's pregnant. Well, she's supposedly waiting for the third son. And so punishment is going to be meted out here. And so when she had relations with Yehuda, all this is in the text, she said, like, what will you pay me? And he was like, well, I don't have any money with me. So she said, well, give me your staff and your signet. And he did. And then when he went to find her to get it back and pay her, she was gone. So she said to him, I'm pregnant by the one whose signet and staff this is. So it's brought down that Yehuda becomes the first Baal Tshuva. He could have hid it. She was not going to embarrass him in public. She said this to him in private, and she would not have embarrassed him in public. So he could have just feigned no knowledge of this at all. But he said in the text, he says 2 words, Sadka mimeni. She is more righteous than me. So Rashi explains, for those who want to see it, this is 38. (38:26) in the Chumash. So Rashi just says very simply, he says, Tzadka b'devareha, she is righteous in what she is saying. Mimeni, he me'uberet, she's pregnant from me. In other words, he publicly acknowledged that he was the father here. And he acknowledged that he should have given his third son, and he didn't. So Rashi says an amazing thing. Listen to this. For Razal Darshu, and our sages make a drush on this. Sheyatsa bat kol v'amra mimeni ume'eti yatsu hadavarim. So Rashi is telling us, read these 2 words as separate statements. Yehuda said Sadka, she is more righteous. And a voice came from heaven and said, Mimeni, this whole incident is from me. So this is like, whoa, like what is the deeper meaning of here? So a midrash is brought, an amazing midrash. So it says, what was happening with the family of Yaakov after the selling of Yosef. So it says Yosef was sitting in sackcloth. Yehuda, the brothers were really mourning and doing tshuva. Yehuda went down from his brothers. So the Midrash says, and what was God doing while all of this is happening? He was preparing the light of Mashiach. He was preparing the light of Mashiach. So now we can understand this voice that came out of heaven saying, Mimeni. So here, just like the story of Yaakov, what did Yaakov know here? What did Yosef know? Did they understand the implications of what was actually happening here? We could ask ourselves in our own lives. We make our choices, we do what we do, and then sometimes a day later, a week later, a year later, 10 years later, we look back and it's like we hear this voice from heaven saying, all of that was from me. Does that mean we were not exercising our free will? No, we were exercising our free will. But God is saying simultaneously, it was all coming from me. That's the mystery of what's called God's providence, determination, foreknowledge, and the ability to have free will. So that's the third incident we have. We have prophetic dreams. We have Yaakov sending Yosef. We have the whole prophecy of Avram Avinu at the covenant of the pieces. Now we have Tamar. Tamar is acting from a prophecy. She is acting because she knows that she has to somehow pull off having children from this family, and she does. And then the next thing we have is the dreams of the butler and the baker. Again, these are prophetic dreams because that's how Yosef interprets them. Now, he could have, these dreams could have had many, many different interpretations. But Yosef, because he learned from his father the meaning of prophetic dreams, and he learned from his father how to interpret dreams, so he was able to interpret these dreams that this is what's going to happen to you. The butler had a dream of a grapevine with 3 clusters, and then he squeezed the grapes and he poured that into the cup of Paro. So Yosef said, 3 clusters are 3 days, and 3 days is Paro's birthday. He's going to reinstate you. After years you've been in jail, you're going to be reinstated as his butler. And that's exactly what happened. And then the baker said, I also had a dream, and I had 3 baskets on my head with bread, and a bird came and ate them. So he said, 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Paro is going to hang you by your head, and birds are going to come and feast off your body. And that is exactly what happened. So here we see the whole Parsha. There's this interweaving of prophecy. And just to go back, we got to this through meditation. That's how I wanted to make the connection here. First, we learned the whole thing of Yaakov sitting in meditation, and how Avram sat in meditation, and how Yitzhak sat in meditation. And all of them became fitting vehicles, vessels for Hashem's revelation to them prophetically. And so here we see throughout the Parsha, we see different shades, different manifestations of prophecy. One more. There's one more. And this is one that many people are not aware of. Here we have, how did Yosef get into jail? How did he end up in jail with the butler and the baker? So this is the whole incident where the wife of Potiphar wants to seduce him, and Yosef resists, and he ends up in jail. To be honest, to just understand what happened there, you need a whole class, quite literally, a whole class to understand. But here we want to get to just one idea, and that is it's brought by the Arizal. And here, if you just read the text, so we would say that the wife of Potiphar is, she's driven by base desire. Yosef's described as being incredibly beautiful. He's one of the only men in the entire Tanakh who's described as being beautiful. And so it appears that the wife of Potiphar is sexually attracted to Yosef. The Ari explains, though, on a deep level, she was also driven by a prophecy, but she had two sides to her. Like most people have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara. And she, like most people, had both of these energies. And there was a level of pure physical desire. But it says that she also had, she felt an attachment to Yosef, and she felt that she didn't have children by Potiphar. That she had a prophecy that she was meant to have children from Yosef. So how does it turn out? It turns out, and I'm cutting corners here, but it turns out, if you remember, Potiphar and the wife of Potiphar, they had an adopted daughter called Osnat. Osnat is actually the daughter of Dinah when she was raped by Shechem. Again, I'm cutting corners. She ended up being sent to Egypt, and she was raised by Potiphar and his wife. In the end, Osnat marries Yosef. So the wife of Potiphar, she saw something. She saw something like an unclear prophecy. And so she was driven by both desire and the prophecy. Now the Ari kind of finishes the story. So that's what we'll call the part that she acted upon, and she ended up sending Yosef to jail for 12 years, was not the good part of the wife of Potiphar. But what happened to her good part, that she felt attached to Yosef, to his kedusha, to his holiness. So the Ari reveals she was reincarnated into Rachav. Rachav is the prostitute in Jericho who helps Joshua defeat Jericho. And what happens? Joshua is the reincarnation of Yosef. And who does Joshua marry? Rachav. She becomes a righteous convert, and he marries her. And so the Ari reveals this is how the prophecy of the wife of Potiphar played itself out. Again, it's what was called unclear prophecy. She was acting from a sense of prophecy, but she didn't see clearly that it wasn't in that lifetime, and it wasn't her, it was actually her adopted daughter. So that's another level of prophecy. So just to tie it all together, it's just an amazing amount of allusions to different levels of prophecy happening in this parsha. So I just want to bless us all. Remember, I said one of the deepest types of Jewish meditation is through learning, is by opening the text and learning it and contemplating it. So here again, here's meditation with your eyes open, thinking, contemplating, reading Rashi, getting another book off the shelf and checking what that says. And then all of this, because you're in a meditative point of, you're like focused Torah. And the idea is a new idea. Remember, Vayeishev equals Chadash, is new. So that's the secret of Jewish meditation and Hitbonanut, and we should all merit to that level.